Public threat perception remains anchored to obsolete models. The incoming missile, the kinetic airstrike. This is a strategic misdirection. The cost of symmetric, conventional warfare is a liability. A state facing a systemic solvency crisis can no longer afford. The deactivation of frontline assets, like the U.S. Army's 5th Air Cavalry Squadron in South Korea, is not a tactical choice. It is a mathematical consequence of economic decay, a point underscored by Federal Reserve policy, leading to what analysts call a crisis of confidence. The decisive vector is not explosive. It is silent. The true target is not a city, but the state's central nervous system. This is a battle of liquidity and data, not munitions. As per CSIS assessments, the critical vulnerability lies in the thousands of miles of undersea fiber optic cables, the conduits for over 99% of global data and trillions in daily financial transactions. An adversary, leveraging the cheap, scalable power of AI-driven autonomous systems, does not need to project kinetic force. It requires only a few unmanned submersibles to sever key transatlantic and trans-Pacific cables. Simultaneously, ground-based lasers can blind the orbital satellite constellations that provide navigation and over-the-horizon intelligence. The cost is negligible. The impact is total. The result of this attack is not a crater, but a condition, the blind Leviathan. A superpower instantaneously disconnected from its global assets, its financial markets vaporized, its command and control networks severed. It remains the most powerful kinetic entity on the planet, but it is deaf, dumb, and sightless. Its intermediate response options are gone. The only remaining protocol is the final one. The motive is not ideology. It is solvency. A nation-state is a balance sheet before it is a flag. When that balance sheet trends toward insolvency, as signaled by a central bank's dubious history that triggers a systemic crisis of confidence, the state is mathematically forced to restructure its liabilities. The largest liability on any state's books is a standing conventional military. CSIS analysis of the Russian Federation's kinetic action offers the blueprint. The initial conventional phase proved to be a catastrophic drain on domestic solvency, creating an unpopular war that became a severe domestic liability. This financial hemorrhaging forces a hard pivot. When you can no longer afford the high kinetic cost of tanks and air superiority, you are compelled to find a cheaper vector. This is the entry point for asymmetry. Reports confirm how drones and AI are transforming modern warfare, not merely as a technological upgrade, but as an economic necessity. An AI-guided drone swarm is orders of magnitude cheaper than a single fighter jet and its pilot. Weakness doesn't breed peace. It forces innovation in low-cost lethality. It's a fire sale on force projection. This is not a foreign problem. The same economic pressures are creating the same strategic pivots here. The deactivation of the U.S. Army's 5th Air Cavalry Attack Helicopter Squadron on December 15th is not a political decision. It is a line item on a spreadsheet. It is the removal of an expensive conventional asset, creating a vacuum that asymmetric protocols are designed to fill. The kinetic cost curve has inverted. A main battle tank, a pillar of symmetric land power, represents a capital expenditure of approximately $5 million. According to analysts at RUSI, the Royal United Services Institute, the vector now used to neutralize that asset is a first-person view drone. The cost, $500. This is not a simple price difference. It is a mathematical blueprint for the obsolescence of conventional platforms. We are witnessing the systemic democratization of violence. This principle dictates that the financial barrier to inflicting mass capital damage has been effectively erased. Any non-state actor can now leverage consumer-grade technology to achieve a strategic outcome once reserved for the budgets of superpowers. For every one tank, 1,000 drones can be fielded. The math does not lie. It creates an untenable economic liability, accelerating the drawdown of conventional forces and creating the strategic vacuum. Forget the headlines. The regional instability you are being shown is not the disease, it is the petri dish. These are not isolated conflicts, they are proxy laboratories. Gray zones, deliberately cultivated to test, refine, and stage the next vector of systemic warfare. The ultimate target is not a forward operating base, it is the economic solvency of the nation-state itself. Observe the data points. Analysts note recent airstrikes in Yemen. To the corporate media, this is background noise. To a strategist, it is a live-fire exhibition, proving the doctrine that AI-driven drone warfare, as detailed in reports from outlets like Vocal Media, delivers maximum kinetic effect for a negligible financial cost. This is the new calculus of conflict. This is not a technological choice, it is a financial mandate. While the Federal Reserve makes what AOL calls dubious history, creating a systemic crisis of confidence, the capacity to fund conventional power degrades. The math is simple. You cannot project force with assets you can no longer afford. The solvency crisis is the accelerant. The evidence is irrefutable. A recent congressional report confirms the U.S. Army deactivated an entire attack helicopter squadron in South Korea on December 15th. This is not strategic nuance, it is asset liquidation. A high upkeep symmetric response option has been removed from the board, creating a deliberate capability vacuum. This creates the protocol trap. When a high-impact, low-cost asymmetric attack is launched from a gray zone proxy, a state stripped of its intermediate kinetic options has no symmetric response. It cannot absorb the loss. It cannot retaliate in kind. State protocol will not permit paralysis. The mathematical certainty is that it will escalate to the one domain where it retains absolute, unquestioned dominance. The decline of conventional power does not lead to peace. It lowers the threshold for launch on warning. The state's nuclear protocol is not a choice. It is a pre-programmed response called launch on warning. The logic is absolute. A validated satellite or radar detection of an inbound strategic launch triggers an immediate mass retaliatory launch. The objective is to ensure your arsenal is airborne before it is destroyed in its silos. It is a zero-sum game of physics and timing. This entire kill chain, however, rests on the integrity of digital signals. As the new era of warfare, driven by AI and autonomous systems, becomes dominant, the primary target is no longer the silo. It is the sensor network. The validation system itself becomes the battlefield. CSIS analysts refer to the critical vulnerability as the fog of digital war. A sophisticated cyber attack does not need to spoof a missile launch. It only needs to blind the system. The radar feed goes dark. The satellite link cuts out. The screen displays two words, no signal. In that moment, the commander is trapped. Is the system blind because it was just destroyed by a first strike, or is this the attack itself? There is no time to verify. With conventional assets degraded, such as the recent deactivation of the 5-17 ACS helicopter squadron, there are no intermediate options to send up and check. The protocol dictates the worst-case assumption. Fear forces the launch. The inability to absorb a conventional blow or an asymmetric digital strike removes all strategic ambiguity. The solvency crisis on the national balance sheet, noted by observers of Federal Reserve actions, has a kinetic cost. It erodes the conventional buffer, leaving only the ultimate liability. Blindness mathematically necessitates escalation. The protocol for a superpower is a function of its economic solvency. According to Federal Reserve data, the system is entering a crisis of confidence, directly impacting its liability structure. This is not theory, it is documented fact. This financial decay projects as a reduction in conventional force. A recent congressional report confirms the deactivation of the 5-17 attack helicopter squadron in South Korea, a tangible withdrawal of symmetric deterrence. The state is liquidating kinetic assets because it can no longer afford their operational cost. This creates a strategic vacuum. Adversaries observe this. As documented by analysts at RUSI and CSIS, the global battlefield has pivoted to low-cost, AI-driven asymmetric vectors. This is the new architecture of warfare. An adversary no longer needs to match a carrier group. It needs to compromise a logistics network. The cost per effect has inverted. The conventionally weakened state, stripped of its intermediate response options, is left with a binary protocol. Absorb the damage or escalate to the one domain of absolute dominance. Therefore, the next phase is not war, it is calibration. An adversary must test this new binary. Expect a calibration shot within the next 12 months. The target, the digital nervous system of a Tier 1 U.S. container port, such as Long Beach or Newark, a multi-hour attribution impossible blackout of the crane and shipping logistics network. It will be officially reported as a cascading server failure. It is not an attack. It is a mathematical inquiry sent via a non-kinetic vector to determine the new threshold for a launch-on-warning response.